Well, hello, everybody. Here we go. We're ready to start this time. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Outwitting the Manipulator. I'm your host, Dr. Dennis Becker, and our co host, as always, Robin Golinski. Welcome, Robin. Glad you're here.
Thank you. But am I really? This might be the AI version of me.
Oh, there you go, folks. We're right up to date with technology here, and Robin is the guru of that. I wouldn't be surprised if this was your AI version of you. You're so good at that. But it wouldn't have been an interesting subject to talk about how AI is going to fit and deal with manipulation. Ooh, you can bet manipulators will find a way to use AI. I guarantee it. Anyway, we're going to talk about manipulation today. Isn't that fun? We always have fun talking about manipulation, and here we go. This particular episode, we're going to deal with two specific tactics, and we're dealing with them because they are popular. That is, they're used a lot.
I love the way you say popular,
Hey, here
like
we
it's a
go.
positive thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, if we can't have some fun with these idiot manipulators, what are we going to do? We're not going to suffer at their hands. They like to use these two that we're talking about. So we're going to show you how to fix them and how to not be taken in by them. The two we're going to be talking about today are conflation and dictating feelings. These are two of the 24 tactics that we deal with in our book. So these two are popular and they're common, and it's hard to keep up with them, particularly this conflation one. So we're going to talk about both of them and how you can deal with a manipulator who is using these things. First of all, of course, you have to recognize that they're using it. So let's talk a little bit about them before we give some examples of it. Let's define it a little bit. Robin, talk a little bit about conflation. What do you think conflation means here?
Well, it's very hard to identify conflation because of it's basically, it's like taking oil and eggs and mixing them together into mayonnaise. So if you're looking at mayonnaise, do you see the oil? Do you see the eggs? No, you don't. You just see mayonnaise. So that's the beauty of conflation, is it happens so quickly and they're so intersected and wrapped up together. And as they're in just right there in the middle of a conversation, it can be hard for you to realize that it's happening. So it's two separate things that are twisted up together. And this is on purpose to confuse you. This is also will affect how you feel, because maybe if they were separated and addressed separately, they wouldn't be able to get the reaction that they want out of you.
There's the word, the reaction.
Zip them up together.
That's what they want. They want to get that reaction from you. Whenever they use a tactic, they want a reaction from you, and particularly they want a reaction of negativity, of confusion, of sorrow, of fear, all of those kind of things. Sometimes joy, because they can use that too as a manipulative tactic. We know that.
As long as they're in control of your feelings.
Yep, that's it.
That's the point.
That's what they want. And conflation allows them to take a shot at you from a couple of different directions at the same time. I mean, literally at the same time. They're talking to you. And when they're talking, they are conflating while they're talking. So, for example, someone might say to you, if I had known it was going to rain today, I would have brought my umbrella. But you didn't inform me of this. And when we made these plans, you were the ones who said we could be outdoors. And when you do these kind of planning things, you always take the lead, and you never give anyone else the opportunity to participate because you think you know it all. And today it's an unfortunate thing because we're all getting rained on. Now, all of that sounds sort of related, but if you listen closely, I did a couple of things. I blamed her, gave her responsibility for the negativity of what's happening in the raining. If she would have done this, so we conflated. Now, we hear these kinds of things, these relating of several things in almost one sentence. We hear it very popularly in politics and in broadcasting and advertising, in politics especially, where they put two or three or four things together, and then you have to figure out which one they were talking about. But let's try one. I'll give you another one. Let's do one from politics. This is easy because they're all over the place. Person asks a question. He says, Senator, are you in favor of that bill? The senator replies, that's a bill that's been very popular because of the supporters that it has in the labor union. And those labor unions, they are very strong when it comes to earnings for their participants. So when you're talking about earnings for participants, you're talking about the kitchen table issues. Those are the issues that these people are really concerned about. And we're talking about a special segment of society, those people who have to work for the money that they get. And these are the people that we're trying to protect. So next question. What?
I
Did
think
he
we
answer
might rename this hopscotch.
Yeah, really, hopscotch. They go from one thing to another, all in basically one sentence. This is what we mean by conflation. Make sense to you now, Robin? You're confused. I confused you, didn't I?
No, you didn't. Well, this is, I think, one of the reasons why we wanted to devote more time to this is that it is very slippery and very difficult, because first you have to identify it, that it's happening, conflation is happening. Then your brain needs to dissect and parse out which is the egg and which is the oil that's now been made into mayonnaise. And then thirdly, if you're going to put the manipulator on notice that you recognize the tactic, which, remember, is the whole point, is not that you're going to cure the manipulator, not that you're going to change the manipulator. None of that's going to happen, but putting the manipulator on notice that you're sharp and paying attention is what takes all the power out of the manipulation. So that's a lot of fast thinking. And this is why we talk often about active listening with a manipulator. You can't, they will pick times when you're distracted or doing something else, particularly for conflation, because conflation requires all of your undivided attention to pick up on. And next thing you know, you've got them conflated in your brain and you don't have them sorted out.
And remember that conflation can also be not on just one subject. It could conflate several different tactics. So remember, in the past, we've talked about when they try
let's stick to the subjects.
But I'm giving an example.
Otherwise, it gets too confusing, because conflation is a tactic.
It is.
So then you use conflation as
if you use
tactics, but let's talk about conflation as a tactic before we talk about conflating of tactics. I think it'll get confusing for people.
Conflate. Okay, so almost conflated there yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So
for example, conflation is something that can be used with, for instance, we gave the example one time of when you're walking out the door and you got your hands in your purse or whatever, and you got the kids, and all of a sudden somebody turns out, remember so and so, and they want to take advantage of the context of that moment.
I see what you're saying.
Conflate a couple of things.
I see what you're saying now. Yes.
So that itself is conflation. They're conflating a couple of tactics.
It's not strictly a verbal subject.
Yeah.
It's conflating the
context.
Yes.
So we're saying conflation. It's conflation not just of an idea. It may be conflation of several tactics. This is why Robin said a key word there. She said you have to have active listening. You have to be a good listener. And we have in other episodes, we've talked about being a good listener. And you want to re-listen to that one, by the way, because that's a very, very good episode on how to strengthen your listening skills. Because to identify conflation, you have to be a good listener. You have to be able to recognize that this has just happened to you.
Yeah, it's easy for us to say this. But I want to take you to a moment where you're incredibly distracted. You're late for something. You're multitasking. You're doing something else. Remember, the manipulator is an opportunist. They're choosing that moment on purpose. Now, a lot of times what people will say in their head, maybe you hear Dennis' nice voice in your head saying, oh, I have to actively listen. Well, I can't actively listen right now. I'm late. I've got this kid's throwing a tantrum. I've got a work meeting in 2 seconds. So this is a mindset in which you have to recognize the power of slowing down. Even in those moments, it's more powerful. So in the moments where they've chosen to get you at a bad time, for you to say to them, I always think of fire, Dennis. I always think stop, drop, and roll, right? If you're
Oh,
on fire, you're literally on fire. You're not going to keep running when you're on fire. So you have to think about it this way and stop, drop, and roll. What I mean by that is stop, no matter what, turn and face them
mm-hmm,
and say something. This is
mm-hmm.
the wrong time to address this. I will speak to you about it later. This is a declarative statement like that, but the actual stopping and making eye contact is powerful. It puts them on notice that you thought you were going to get away with this because I was distracted and hurried. I've just slowed time down. So you slow down to speed up. It doesn't take any time to do that. You have to get the mindset of realize, oh, I don't have time for that. I have to go. No, take the time
Yeah.
because this is how you take the power. Anyway.
And you have to practice taking the time. Now, when we say taking the time, it doesn't mean you can just push a reset button, stop a pause button and go and think about it. No, in the moment. This is why you have to practice at times when you are not in the moment, when you can practice by yourself and hear it and feel it and get a sense of the timing that it takes to be like that. For example, so what can you do in the moment when it happens? When you take the time, what can you do? Remember in the past, we have talked about depending on what type of person you're dealing with, your manipulator, is he or she an ethos, pathos, or logos type of person? When you determine that your manipulator is an ethos type of person, maybe you know this ahead of time. Maybe you always know this. You can always be prepared for it. But if you think that this person is somebody who thinks that they're really pretty cool and, they know who they are and they think they're hot stuff and all that, you can stop. And when you think in a moment, you can say something to that type of person like, that's funny. You put together a couple of things there. You're always so clear. Do you want to talk about X or Y? All of a sudden, the manipulator knows that you noticed that he or she has conflated a couple of things. If you're dealing with a pathos person, a very emotional person, and they conflate something, oh, hold on a second. You just said 2 or 3 different things. What the heck? Which one are we going to talk about? So you're a little bit more lighthearted if that's kind of person. And that puts them on notice that you got it. If you're talking about what we call a logos person who's very logical and likes things in black and white, and you get that conflation, you simply say, okay, hold on a second. Do you want to talk about X or Y? You gave 2 things. See the difference in presentation style as well as what to say? This is how you deal with conflation in the moment. But you got to practice that ahead of time. You have to be thinking about it.
Unless the conflation is the situation in which you're too rushed. In that case, less is more.
Yeah.
So in that case, it
Absolutely.
would go to what I said and say, this is inappropriate. I won't discuss this now or something.
Simple.
But the eye contact and the pause and the declarative succinct statement. Remember, the more you talk, the deeper you get into the quicksand with a manipulator.
Yep. The more they like it. Yep. It's all fodder for them to work with and to need KNEAD.
And they're controlling you.
Yeah.
They're controlling you. So yeah.
Right. So conflation is something that's going to happen to you all the time. It's putting 2 or 3 or 4 things together or more, all in one thought, relatively quickly. Now, the best place to look for this, as I said, is politics, because so many politicians do it as a way of avoiding the issue and so forth. When you see it, just notice it. If you're watching on television, you're listening to politicians say things, listen for it.
Yes.
And then you want to call it out. If you get a person to call it out. If not, in your mind, say, oh, that was. And then practice, what would you say if you were right there? Okay.
The politicians, Dennis, almost don't ever not do that.
I know. It's very common.
I mean, they don't almost every single answer to every single question. They actually practice conflation as an art form because they have their talking points, but they get asked a question. So they conflate whatever the question is with what they actually want to talk about. So it's a great way to, and it's very frustrating to listen to because you go, wait a minute, did they ever answer the question?
Yeah. Right.
No, usually no. Usually they never answer the question.
Which brings us a very good point. Remember we talked before, folks, before about having curiosity and courage. What do you mean answer the question? If you hear that Ask a question about it. Ask a question about a specific point of the points that were conflated. Ask about one of them. Don't be worried about getting all of them. Ask a specific question about one of the issues that was mentioned that you care about.
Remembering that the agenda here is not to get to truth with a capital T, because you
Oh,
never,
good luck.
ever going to with a manipulator.
Yeah, good luck.
Ever. This is
Good
why we
luck.
tell you to get away from them.
Yeah.
You're never going to get to the truth.
Yeah.
But what you're doing, the actual agenda for you, is putting them on notice that you're paying attention.
And we try
it's
not to
not
be
working.
political on our show, in this episode, any episodes, we try not, but in this particular case,
Uh-oh,
it is so
Vincent
easy
freezing.
for you to see conflation in action. You can see it in action when politicians talk almost every time, like Robin said. So practice it, listen to it, see what you hear, practice in your own mind. What would you say if you were present? And then think it through ahead of time so that when you get conflation, do you have a manipulator who's an ethos, pathos, or logos person? And how would you respond? It takes time. Don't rush into it, and you're not going to change them. Practice for your good. It's got nothing to do with them. You practice for yourself. Now, let's talk about a different tactic. We mentioned we were going to talk about dictating feelings. Robin, what does that mean? Can you explain a little bit more about what that means, dictating feelings?
Well, this can be quite insidious as well. But we use a strong word, dictating, but the way it actually shows up is they tell you how you feel. They tell you what your feelings are, but they can do it in a way that you actually feel those feelings because they're brainwashing you. Basically, they're telling you how you feel. So before we even get into the tactic, I think it's very important. If you're somebody who's been in a manipulative relationship, whether at work or at home, but a long-term manipulative relationship, one of the side effects is you may not know how you feel about anything, because if this goes on over time, you get to the point where all of your feelings have been dictated and all channeled through the manipulator, so that you probably can't identify them at all.
Yeah.
However, if you haven't gotten to that point where they've completely commandeered all the real estate in your brain, then it's important for you to sit with yourself and think about how you feel about whatever. The party last night, the meeting that we had at 4:00 today, whatever it is, how do you actually feel about it? So one thing that's also important as a mindset is that you have a right to feel however you like about anything as a human being. You have a right to your own feelings about whatever it is. And that, I say that and you think, oh yeah, duh, but no. I can't even tell you how many people I know who literally don't know this, don't act as though they think that they have a right, because they're so worried about what other people think. And they're so worried about whether they're liked or not. Or, it goes on and on and on. So what are your feelings? You have a right to your feelings. If you feel uncomfortable, if you feel icky, if you feel, like something's wrong, that you have a right to whatever those feelings are. Okay. So if you don't believe that, or your ship has sailed because for so long you've been told how to feel that you don't even know what it is, that's a much more difficult situation. And then can you articulate those feelings?
Yeah.
Can you put a name to it, the specific feelings, not happy and sad, but inspired, a specific feeling, frustrated, a very descriptive word.
Yeah, see that's so interesting when you listen to Robin, and if you can see her, you're watching the video, but if you only hear her, it's so interesting because Robin, you are so passionate about this. I know you hate this kind of thing, and you hate the way people are. You almost hate people who are like this, and it gets you
So
all
Dennis
upset.
is
So,
now dictating my feelings.
well, you do. You
Okay.
hate that sort of thing.
Okay, so he's demonstrating for you what it's like. So he's telling me, okay, so I would say, this is how I'd respond. I would say, wait a minute. So here's what I'm thinking in my head while he's saying this. Hate is a strong word. I don't remember using the word hate. And then I'm thinking to myself, do I hate? And then I'm like, I guess you could in my mind, I'm thinking, I guess you could interpret it that way. Well, maybe I do hate him. So this is all going on in my brain while he's talking. And what that's doing is I'm starting to allow him very subtly, very insidiously, I'm starting to allow him to tell me how I feel. Because why? Well, I want him to like me. I think he's smarter than me. So maybe he knows better than me. So these are things that happen inside you. Well, he said that with such confidence. Maybe he has a point.
Mhm.
And now I've lost my foothold on
Mhm.
what my truth is, how I actually feel.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's very important that you pivot, that you do address these things while they're happening. We talk about this. Dennis
Mhm.
came up with the phrase, the manipulator controls
The
the momentum
momentum
of the
of the
moment.
moment.
So in order for you to thwart manipulation, you have to thwart the moment, the
Mhm.
manipulator's moment of controlling you. So let's do it again. Um, Dennis, go
Do it
ahead.
again. We already did it once. I
But I
mean,
want to
you,
demonstrate how. Oh, he's doing it already.
you're so.
Okay.
I mean,
It's confusing, Dennis. We need to start the role play officially because otherwise,
I have to tell you when I'm role playing.
yeah, but there's English people who are non
All right, don't
English.
recognize it. Okay, all right.
Yes,
So
just
here's an example.
declare the role play instead of
Okay,
just.
here's an example of that. I'm going to dictate Robin's feelings on some subject that we've just talked about. So uh, you see if you can pick out when I'm dictating her feelings and how, if it was you, you would respond, and then see how Robin responds. When we were thinking about taking an Uber over to the conference, I thought about it. This is fine, but I know how you hate those Uber drivers. I know. On the other hand, I know there's times when you love the Uber drivers because of who they are, what they are like. But
Dennis, I
I
have to
just don't
pause
want to
you.
get. I don't want to get mixed up with
Dennis,
that. Let's just take the cab.
I have to pause you right there. That's inaccurate. Usually you're pretty good with things like this, but I don't hate or love Uber drivers. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Well, I think you get confused a lot of when things are uncertain. You don't really handle decision making very well. You get confused, and so Uber,
Dennis,
who's coming.
I have to pause you again.
What?
I'm not confused. Could you please give me a specific example of when you thought I was confused? Because it sounds like you're confused about my confusion.
Well, maybe I am, but okay. So what did
Not
Robin do
to
there?
resolve it. It's not about
Yep.
resolving it
No,
or
not going
changing
to
his
happen.
mind. It's
Not going
about
to
putting
happen.
him on notice.
Right. So what did Robin do? Okay. She actually said, I have to pause you there. She stopped me speaking. She stopped me sort of mid thought because she had already heard that I dictated something about her that she
That
didn't
can feel
like.
that can feel very confrontational for
It
some
can,
people.
it
And
can feel.
you have a right. You have a right to do this.
You defend
So
yourself.
yes.
Now, you know what will happen? It will that dictating feelings will get conflated with something else. They'll immediately shift to something else
Yeah.
and say, what are you so upset about? I mean, I'm not saying you're not. You just always act that way. I mean, I'm trying to give you an example of like in the office, every time that people get upset about something, you're the one who has to jump in and say, no, and doesn't sit you well in the office, the reputation that you have. But at any rate, when we get to this conference, I don't want you to be behaving that way. Wow.
Okay. Role play. Dennis,
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
it seemed to me like you were just really jealous, and your jealousy, it's not just obvious to me. It's obvious to the people in our work meeting. The way that you scoffed and you made comments. So, I don't think you want to reveal that to other
Mm.
people.
Yeah.
Now,
You're too sensitive, Robin. You're just too sensitive about this stuff.
it goes on and on and on.
Goes on
Oh,
and on, folks. Exactly
this
right.
is a
This is
good
what
one.
happens.
That's the most popular one. You're
Yeah.
overly sensitive. We talk
Yeah.
about that a lot
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because that is a shutdown method right there. Just shut you
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're overreacting. You're overly emotional. That's my favorite. You're
Mm-hmm.
overly emotional.
Mm-hmm.
When I had a teenage daughter, she used to say, "Calm down."
Mm-hmm.
After she got me to calm up, or after
Get you going.
after she got me going, she'd go, "Calm down."
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes what happens is the response that Robin may have had becomes as emotional and as effervescent as what she'd say, I'm not that. What are you talking about? You always say,
And you're
give me
proving
an
it.
example of that. That would be a very pathos response, which
Yeah.
the manipulator would love.
I'm glad
Because,
you brought that up, Dennis,
yeah,
because I think delivery is
yes, key.
really important.
Yeah.
Really
So even
important.
if I said the same words, if I said them in that more emotional way, you know what the manipulator is going on in his mind?
Or
I
her
got her.
mind.
I got her. I got her. I knew that would get her.
Yep.
That's what's going on.
Glee, Glee, glee. They are so, it's hard to imagine if you're a normal person, but a manipulator feels joyful glee when they get you going or they
Yep.
get you on your back foot.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
they can see you start to unravel a little bit.
Yep.
Woo-wee, they love
Yep.
that.
That's exactly right. Remember, control is the key to them. They
Yes.
want to control your emotions, your behaviors, and these are the kind of tactics that they use. This conflation and dictating feelings. These are the kind of things that you're going to experience from your manipulator.
If
So,
you, I
go
want
ahead,
to just give
Robin.
a little
Go ahead.
if you ever walk away from something, you walk into a situation or an experience and you're pretty clear about it. You're pretty clear about, I'm excited about this, or I'm looking forward to this, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, you feel confused, and maybe you feel icky, or you feel frustrated, or angry, or sad, and you think to yourself, "Wow, that's so weird. I was so excited to go or to be at that event, and now I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's terrible." This is probably what's
Yep.
happening. Somebody has dictated your feelings to you,
Yep.
and you want to look back over what happened and when. Now, if you've got drinking and an altered state involved, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that.
Yeah.
But just, this is what typically happens over and over again with the manipulator. They love to set you up to
Yeah.
have you think one thing and then have the control over flipping it and have you feel something completely different.
And I'll
That's
tell you, this is, I'll tell you from having dealt with so many manipulators, I want to tell you, folks, they practice this. They actually think about it ahead of time. They practice how to say, what to say, how fast to say, what facial expression they should have. Manipulators are deep into this kind of a thing. It's hard for us, if you're a normal person, it's hard to imagine that somebody would give that kind of dedicated time and effort to these sorts of things. But
Oh,
they do.
I want
They
to
do.
add something in here, Dennis, and it's almost foreshadowing of a future episode, but this is a very good a good way. You can observe this happening with others and be an advocate for the other.
Mm,
So
mm,
maybe you're not the target, but you're watching this go down, and you can step in and say, "Don't tell him how he feels. I think he was
mm,
pretty clear on how he feels." You can say something just short and sweet like that that will help wake up that
mhm,
person to, wow, somebody
mhm,
else is observing this.
mhm.
I'm not crazy. Somebody else sees it.
Yeah.
You can
Eh,
really be helpful by doing that for others, whether they're family,
well,
friends.
you're always interrupting. I wasn't talking to you. You're just interrupting. You do it all the time. I don't know. What are you doing here even? Why are you here?
Okay, so then
There you
you
go.
would say something to Dennis, like,
Yep.
what? What would they say, Dennis?
Why are you asking me that? I'm reflecting on something that you just said to Robin. Why are you asking me that? Refl- uh, you can always ask them a question. They don't like that. They don't like your sense of curiosity. Why did you do? They don't want to. Never mind why I did it. I just did it. You don't have to know why I did it.
Especially why? Because
Especially why. They don't like that.
the why is the dark, secret, hidden part.
But you're right, though, Robin. We have in the past we did an episode. Look it up. It's called "Murdering the Messenger." What happens if you try to intersect and try to intercept and help somebody? We did an
Well,
episode on that. That
that's
was
it.
great.
That's if you go deep, but I'm talking about simply acknowledging,
Yeah.
noting what's happening
Okay.
to help that person. Like, she
Right.
didn't say she hated that.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
where did you get that from? Like
Yeah.
something very
Yeah.
simple, but just noting, I don't know why you're telling her how she feels or how he feels.
All right. So
And
for
you guys
today, in
we got
this
to go into
episode,
role play with no announcement because it's too.
I hate to tell you, but the old clock on the wall says we're up to time, Robin. So we have to move on. But
It's
we've
too
talked
bad.
about.
It's a juicy subject. So
I know.
I think we foreshadowed properly that we will be talking about
Yeah.
how you can help others too, because you
Yeah.
can actually be the target of a manipulator
Hmm.
and still help somebody else who's the target
Exactly.
of them. Sometimes it's easier to see things that are happening in
Yeah.
another than your own.
Yeah.
So
And
you
we'll
can,
go back again. We'll go back again and review those words that we passed by you so quickly. If you haven't heard the episode on defining ethos, pathos, and logos, we'll do that again too in an upcoming episode. Today, we wanted to deal with these two things:
well, you
conflation.
can go back. All the episodes are there, and there is one devoted to ethos, pathos, and logos.
Everything's there. That's right. Uh,
And you
conflation and
can find us. Oh, sorry.
conflation and dictating feelings were the two that we dealt with today. And we're going to try to deal with some of the specificity of some of the topics, tactics more as we go along. And of course, answering the questions that you send us. So don't hesitate. Robin, tell folks how they can reach us.
So you can reach us at Outwit in Real Time. You can find our book. You can order our book there, which the book has an Outwit table in it with all 24 manipulative tactics and how to respond to them. The book has exercises. It's not a hard read, and it's something you can't unknow once you know it.
Got the CR
Also,
code. Don't forget that. You click on the CR code and you'll see
QR.
Robin and I practicing and showing you how to do it.
Yeah, there's 3-minute videos on every
Yeah.
single manipulative tactic in QR codes. And there's also the Audible book is there. The link to the podcast is there, workshops, coaching, all of the above. So look for us at Outwit in Real Time. You can subscribe there confidently because we don't know how to do spam.
we won't do that.
But you will hear from us when it's relevant and non-manipulative.
Well, thank you very much for being with us during this episode. We are here for you constantly. And anytime you want to tune in, you know how to reach us now, thanks to Robin. And until we see you again next time, I am Dr. Dennis Becker and my colleague Robin Golinski saying thanks for being with us and bye for now.